called it Cranford House, a crumbling Victorian mansion standing aloof on the cliffs above Southwell Bay, its iron gates forever rusted half-closed, its windows like hollow eyes watching the grey sea. Generations whispered about the curse, and in every tale, the name Eleanor Cranford echoed like a ghostly refrain. But it wasn't the whispers that brought Inspector Lionel Harrow to the house that October morning. It was the scream. The call had come just after dawn. The groundskeeper, an old man named Jonas Wicks, had stumbled out of the servants' wing, pale as a sheet, muttering something about a body in the Red Room before collapsing on the gravel drive. By the time Harrow's car ground up the winding path through the mist, the sun had barely risen, and the sea was a mass of heaving slate beneath the cliffs. He stepped into the foyer, and the smell hit him first. Stale dust, salt, and something else sharp and metallic. The butler, a stooped man in a threadbare waistcoat, led Harrow upstairs in silence, shoes thudding on the fraying carpet. The Red Room, as it was known in local legend, had been locked for nearly a century, ever since Eleanor Cranford's mysterious disappearance in 1925. The family had long since died out or fled the place, save for the reclusive heir Marcus Cranford, who had returned only a week earlier. He now lay sprawled on the floor beneath the grand fireplace, eyes wide open in glassy shock, a smear of crimson trailing from his temple to the base of a dusty settee. The room itself was undisturbed, no signs of struggle, no broken glass, not even a scuffed shoe out of place, except one thing. On the fireplace mantel sat a playing card, the Queen of Spades, crisp, unmarked, and centered perfectly between two antique candlesticks. Harrow stared at it for a long time before slipping on his gloves. There were no signs of forced entry, no signs of anyone entering or leaving. According to the butler, Marcus had locked himself in just after dinner the night before, claiming he needed to commune with the ghosts. Harrow noted the absurdity. No one should have been able to get in. Yet here Marcus lay dead from a single clean blow to the head, with nothing nearby capable of inflicting such a wound. The police photographer clicked away quietly as Harrow turned the card over. Blank. He checked Marcus's hands. No bruising, no defensive wounds. The fireplace poker was cold. The windows were shut tight. The only key to the room was still in Marcus's pocket. A locked room mystery. A ghost story come to life. Back downstairs, Jonas Wicks had regained consciousness and was cradling a chipped mug of tea, fingers trembling. Harrow knelt beside him. "You were the one who found the body." Wicks nodded mutely. "Why were you up so early?" "I heard music," Jonas whispered. "From the Red Room. Piano, soft-like. There ain't no piano in there, sir. Hasn't been for years." Harrow raised an eyebrow. "And you decided to investigate?" "I thought maybe." He paused, shaking his head. "It didn't feel right. Something drew me in. When I got close, the door was open, not locked, not anymore." Which was impossible. Harrow had personally retrieved the key from Marcus's coat. Either Jonas was lying or someone had locked it after committing the murder. By noon, Harrow had interviewed everyone in the house. The butler, the cook, the maid, and the groundskeeper. None had seen anyone enter or leave the Red Room. No one claimed knowledge of the playing card. The only unusual thing reported was a power outage the night before, shortly after 9. But the Red Room had no electricity. It was lit by candlelight only. Back in the study, Harrow reviewed the case files left by the local constabulary. In 1925, Eleanor Cranford had vanished from the same room. No blood, no body, just a broken mirror and a card. The Queen of Spades. It wasn't the first time. Every 25 years, someone had either vanished or died in that room. Always in October, always with the same card left behind. In 1950, a war veteran named Thomas Raines had fallen from the balcony after claiming he saw a woman in black in the mirror. In 1975, a Cranford cousin, Madeline Fry, was found drowned in the ornamental fountain, clutching the same card. In 2000, a film crew attempting a documentary inside the house lost a cameraman, never found. The only trace left, a queen of spades on the lens cap. 4 victims, now a 5th, and always the room, always the card. Harrow stared long into the fireplace that evening after the forensics team had cleared out. The room was silent now, the only sound the wind clawing at the windows. He closed his eyes and listened. There was no piano, no ghosts, just the sound of a mystery tightening around his mind like a noose. But something gnawed at him, something about the card. It wasn't just a symbol, it was a message. The Queen of Spades. In cartomancy, she meant deception, danger, a woman of shadows. Was this a calling card or a warning? He glanced toward the mirror above the fireplace, still unbroken. Faint specks of dust danced in its reflection. For a moment he could almost swear he saw a woman there in the corner, pale, watching. But when he turned, the corner was empty, and the card was gone. Inspector Harrow remained in the Red Room longer than he should have. The others had long since gone. The coroner had taken the body, the officers packed up their kits, and the forensics team mumbled their inconclusive findings before retreating down the creaking staircase. But Harrow stood there, hands behind his back, staring into the mirror. Not because he believed in ghosts, but because it was the only place the story didn't add up. The card had vanished. He'd left it on the floor after documenting it. There had been no one in the room except himself. No open doors, no sudden gust, just gone like it had never been there. He scoured the floor, the hearth, behind the furniture. Nothing. By late afternoon, the sky outside had turned the color of bruised grapes. Harrow descended the stairs slowly, mind racing. The others had clustered in the drawing room. Jonas Wicks sat in a stiff-backed chair near the fire, sipping his tea, knuckles still white around the cup. The cook, a stout woman named Greta, was knitting slowly in a corner. The maid, Lily, barely 19, stood by the window pretending not to watch Harrow's every move. Only the butler, Everett, remained composed. He stepped forward as Harrow entered. "Shall I prepare a room for you, sir?" "No," Harrow said, "but I'll be staying nearby. I'll need full access to the house tomorrow, and I'll want to speak to you again. Alone." Everett gave a polite bow. Of course. But something in his eyes had changed. That evening, Harrow walked the grounds alone. The sea was louder now, smashing against the cliffs below. He found the small greenhouse abandoned, its glass panes yellowed with time and salt. Nearby, a rusted iron bench faced the trees. From here, one could see the whole side of the house, the Red Room's narrow balcony included. Harrow noted it, filed it away. He returned just before dark to the inn at Southwell Bay. It was there he found her waiting. Lenora Quinn sat at a table in the corner of the lounge, swirling a spoon absently in her tea. She wore a raincoat over a cream wool dress, her hair pulled back, her leather satchel resting beside her chair. Harrow paused, surprised. "Lenora?" "Inspector." She smiled faintly. "I heard you'd be here." "How?" "I make a point of knowing where the unusual cases land, and you always seem to catch the strangest of them." He hadn't worked with Lenora Quinn in over 2 years. Former police consultant, independent now. Keen mind, eyes like razors. He nodded to the empty chair across from her. "I assume you've read the files." "More than read." She leaned forward. "I visited Cranford House 5 years ago, purely out of curiosity. That was after the cameraman incident. The atmosphere's the same now, isn't it? Stale, tense, expectant." "It's a house waiting to see if you'll flinch," Harrow muttered. She smiled. "Exactly, south." "What did you miss?" Harrow relayed the events. The card, the locked room, the missing object, the power outage. Lenora listened in silence, occasionally scribbling something in her small leather notebook. The card vanished, she repeated. No trace? None. That's not mischief, that's message. Something about that card threatened someone. Or implicated them. Same thing. She flipped her notebook shut. You're looking at this like a timeline, cause and effect. But Cranford House isn't like that. It's recursive. Everything loops. If someone placed the card and someone removed it, then either they were still in the house or never left. Harrow frowned. You think someone's hiding in there? I think someone never left that room, at least not in the way you expect. They returned at first light. Harrow arranged for the staff to be out of the house, sent to the village under the pretense of further police interviews. Only Everett remained. As they re-entered the Red Room, Lenora stopped at the threshold. Hold on. She stepped back and examined the latch, the hinges, even the floorboards beneath the threshold. Who installed the new lock? She asked. Marcus had it done the day he arrived. Then why are there scoring marks around the strike plate? And look here, fresh splinters. She looked up at Harrow. This door was forced from the inside. It didn't make sense. The door had been locked when Harrow arrived. He'd retrieved the key from Marcus's coat. But Lenora was right. The damage was subtle but present. Someone had locked the room after they left. From inside. They moved into the room. The mirror gleamed slightly in the morning light. Lenora went straight to the bookshelf. She wasn't looking at titles. She was measuring gaps, tilts, traces of dust. She reached behind a row of volumes and pulled out a crumpled envelope. No seal, she murmured. No address. Inside was a single photograph, black and white. A woman in a long dress standing before the same fireplace. In her hand was the Queen of Spades. Scrawled across the back in old ink were the words, "She always returns." Lenora passed the photo to Harrow, who turned it slowly in his gloved hands. The woman in the photo looked strikingly like Eleanor Cranford. He walked to the mirror again. This time he tapped its surface gently, solid, but something caught his eye. The faintest glimmer at the top corner, where the wood frame met the wall. He stepped onto a nearby stool, pried back the molding, a hidden compartment. Inside was a small cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside the bundle, 5 playing cards, each one a Queen of Spades. One had dried blood along the edge. Another had a tiny burn mark. Another had a greasy fingerprint faded with time. "These are trophies," Lenora whispered. "Each one from a victim, and someone has kept them, guarded them." Harrow stared at the cards, heart thudding. "What are we looking at?" he muttered. "A pattern," she replied. "A ritual. Someone, maybe a descendant, maybe a devotee, is continuing the curse. The legend of the house has been weaponized." "But why now?" Harrow asked. "Marcus only just returned." "Exactly," Lenora said softly. "Someone didn't want him to, and now he's dead. But they've slipped. They moved the card. They forced the door. They left behind fingerprints, just not on surfaces we were checking." Harrow looked at her sharply. "You saw something else." She turned to the fireplace. "I saw someone watching us yesterday. A reflection, but not in the glass." "In what?" She turned back to him. "In the brass candlestick. Bottom edge, polished. Someone was behind you just for a moment." The silence in the room deepened. Somewhere in the walls, the wind shifted. Harrow's breath steamed faintly in the morning cold. He turned to the window, then to the mirror again. Someone was still here, watching. The cards were sealed in an evidence bag and placed into Harrow's coat pocket. The photograph stayed in his hand longer than it needed to. He couldn't shake the woman's gaze, flat, expressionless, yet disturbingly present. The curve of her cheek, the slight tension in her fingers clutching the Queen of Spades. It all whispered that she had known this moment would come again. Downstairs, Everett waited with his usual composure, his hands folded neatly before him like a man about to serve tea rather than confront a murder investigation. The others, Jonas, Greta, Lily, had returned reluctantly from the village, called back under the pretense of a fresh round of questions. They gathered in the parlor, each occupying the same place they had the night of Marcus's death. The air felt heavy, not with mourning but with expectancy, like each of them was waiting to see who would make the first wrong move. Harrow began with Everett. The butler's answers were calm and precise, every word measured. "Mr. Cranford dined alone in the library," he said. "He asked for a bottle of the 1907 claret. I brought it to him myself at approximately 8:15. He seemed agitated." "Did he say why?" Everett's eyes flicked briefly to the fire before answering. "He mentioned something about finishing it. When I inquired, he waved me off." "Was that the last time you saw him?" "I passed him again in the hall just before 9. He was carrying a candlestick and a key, headed for the Red Room." "Did anyone else see him after that?" "I can't say." Harrow paused. "Everett, do you believe in the curse?" There was the faintest twitch of a smile on the man's lips. "I believe people who think they're cursed tend to make poor decisions, whether by fear or fate. It amounts to the same." Lily was next. She stood stiffly in front of the fireplace, wringing her hands. Her voice was light, nervous, as if every word she said was being silently rehearsed before it left her mouth. "He said he didn't want dinner," she blurted when asked about Marcus. "He told me not to disturb him after 8, that he needed solitude." "What did you hear that night?" "Nothing. I mean, the wind, maybe, and... Oh, wait, I thought I heard something around 10. A piano. Where from?" I don't know, just faint. I thought maybe someone left a radio on, but when I checked the parlor, it was empty." "Did you go upstairs?" Her eyes flicked to Everett, then back to Harrow. "No, sir." "Did you see anyone else that night? Anyone who seemed out of place?" She hesitated again. "Well, Jonas was outside. He often takes walks at night." That made Harrow's gaze shift. Jonas hadn't mentioned that. Jonas was called in next. He looked worse than before, ashen and hunched, with yellowed eyes that refused to settle on Harrow's. "You were walking the grounds?" Jonas nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get restless nights. It's the air, makes my legs ache if I don't move." "Lily says she saw you. Then I must have been there." "What time did you hear the piano?" "Just after 10. But it wasn't coming from the parlor." "Where then?" Jonas's mouth tightened. "The Red Room. There's no piano in the Red Room." "Exactly." He looked up at Harrow now, eyes hard. "I've worked this estate 30 years, Inspector. Never once did I go near that room, not after what happened to Madeline Fry. But I heard it, clear as anything. One of them old songs, those ballroom ones, like it was echoing down through the ceiling, and when I got up there, the door was open, not a crack, open wide." "That's not what you said before." Jonas blinked. You said the door was locked and you used your key to open it." "No, I meant it was locked. I must have confused it." "You sure?" "I think so." "You think?" Harrow leaned in slightly. "Jonas, are you hiding something?" "No," he barked too quickly. "I swear on my life. I only opened that door 'cause I heard music, and when it stopped, when I didn't hear nothing, I got scared. I thought maybe Marcus had fallen or something worse. I didn't kill him, Inspector. I'd never harm a Cranford, not even that one." That one, it was a slip, but not one Harrow missed. Greta, the cook, came in last. She settled heavily into the armchair by the window, arms folded. "I didn't hear any damn piano," she said plainly. And if anyone else claims otherwise, they've been breathing too much dust. Did you see Marcus at all that night? Number Y gave Lily the tray. She took it up. Lily blinked. That's not true. Greta turned slowly toward her. You saying I'm lying, girl? I never brought him anything. He said he didn't want to be disturbed. Greta stared, then scoffed. Then where's the tray? What tray? Harrow asked. The silver one with the etched edges. Family heirloom, I'm told. It's missing. Was in the kitchen until that night. Are you sure? Greta rolled her eyes. Inspector, I know that kitchen better than I know my own dreams. That tray's been sitting under the spice rack since the last garden party, and now it's gone. Harrow made a note. Could it have been taken up to the red room? Greta shrugged. I didn't take it, and if the girl's telling the truth, neither did she. The contradictions were piling up. Everett's calm deflections, Lily's nervous half-truths, Jonas's shifting story, Greta's denial of the piano, and somewhere among them, the silver tray, missing, and quite possibly, the murder weapon, heavy enough to kill with a single blow, easy enough to clean and conceal. Back in the study, Harrow and Lenora sat reviewing their notes. She'd drawn a web of connections on a torn ledger page, names and arrows, little question marks where the gaps in truth yawned wide. They're lying, she said, each of them in some way. Motives? Jonas is loyal to the house, too loyal. That kind of fealty bends into hate over time. Everett is protecting someone, probably not himself. Lily's afraid of something or someone, and Greta, she's the only one not pretending to grieve. Harrow glanced at the cards again. 5 queens, 5 victims. Someone's been watching this ritual unfold for a long time, he said, waiting for the next part to play out. It's no longer about a curse, it's about a legacy. Lenora nodded slowly. And whoever's behind it doesn't plan to stop with Marcus. She tapped the photograph, then the fireplace. They're telling us what comes next, if we're clever enough to listen. The morning air inside Cranford House had gone bitter, not just cold, soured. Harrow felt it as soon as he crossed the threshold. The rooms were the same, the wallpaper unchanged, the furniture unmoved. But the feeling that something, someone, was hiding behind the mundane had only deepened overnight. Lenora had already returned to the red room, reviewing the mirror and the fireplace for the 3rd time, while Harrow made his way to the drawing room, where Everett was setting out a tray of tea with his usual mechanical grace. No need for performance, Harrow said as he closed the door behind him. I think you know why I'm here. Everett didn't flinch. You'd like to know why I stayed. That and why you're the only one who isn't lying poorly. The butler placed a spoon gently on the saucer. Because I'm not lying. I simply choose not to speak unless I must. Harrow sat. Then speak now. Who were you protecting the night Marcus died? Everett's jaw tensed. I was protecting the house. That doesn't mean anything. It means everything. Everett turned, voice taut. Marcus was the last Cranford, the last to carry the name. He returned only because he believed there was something to claim. Property, perhaps, legacy. But he knew nothing of the house, truly knew nothing. He poked and prodded like a child, awakened things that had long gone quiet. So you admit something was awakened? I admit he believed it. Harrow stared. You think that's enough reason for someone to murder him? No, Everett said, folding his hands. But I think he was digging into things others preferred, left buried. Lenora joined them a few minutes later, lips pressed thin. The mirror was cleaned recently, not dusted, cleaned, carefully. Everett looked up. By Marcus on his first night, said it was time to see clearly. Lenora dropped into a chair beside Harrow. So he was looking for something. Clues, perhaps. Maybe even proof of Eleanor. Or the curse, Harrow said. They gathered the staff again, one by one. Lily was called first this time. Her eyes darted like a cornered rabbit's as Harrow laid out a fresh set of questions. Why had she lied about the tray? Why had she hesitated about Jonas? Why had she seemed more afraid than shocked? I didn't mean to lie, she said, fingers twisted in her lap. I just didn't want to be blamed. Blamed for what? I don't know. Anything. Marcus was cruel. He'd shout for no reason. Said I was stealing food, that I listened at keyholes. Did you? Once, not out of curiosity, he was talking to someone, but there was no one else in the room. Harrow leaned forward. When? 3 nights before he died. I passed by the study and heard him say, I'll expose you, even if it takes the rest of the family with you. She looked up at them both, eyes wide. But there was no one. I swear, was Everett nearby? She hesitated. But Jonas was in the hall. Jonas, then. The groundskeeper entered like a man walking to the gallows. Harrow cut through the pretense quickly. You hated him. Jonas's eyes darkened. I didn't hate him. I hated what he stood for. What was that? Greed, arrogance. That house don't belong to people like Marcus. He wanted to sell it, rip up the gardens, auction the paintings, turn it into some retreat for rich tourists. You know what he said to me the day he arrived? You're just part of the furniture. And yet you stayed. I stayed for the house, not for him. Lenora interjected. Did Marcus find something? A letter, a will, something that upset the others? Jonas looked away. You're protecting someone, Harrow said quietly. I'm protecting the only thing left that matters. This place. Not them. It was Greta who finally started to crack. When Harrow entered the kitchen, she was chopping onions with deliberate, angry strokes, though there was no meal to prepare. You're pressing the wrong people, she said before he even asked. I think everyone here's pressing each other. You want a motive? Fine. Marcus planned to sell everything by Christmas. Everett would be out of work, Jonas without a home, Lily back on the street. And me? He said I'd be lucky to retire with my recipes. That's all we were to him. Costs. Did he tell you this directly? She nodded, steel in her eyes. He was proud of it. Said the house was a bleeding wound and he'd stitch it shut. Did you confront him? No need to. He was already frightened, walking the halls at night like a ghost himself, muttering to the walls. I think he saw things, heard them, might have even believed they were talking back. And did you hear the music? She hesitated. Only once. Just after I found Lily crying in the pantry, said she saw Eleanor's face in the mirror. That wasn't in any of Lily's stories. Why didn't you mention that before? Because she begged me not to. Harrow left the kitchen in silence, walking the length of the hall with slow, measured steps. The pieces were there, just scattered. Each suspect held one shard of the truth, but none enough to see the full picture. Marcus had threatened someone, found something, planned something. Back in the study, Lenora pinned a paper to the corkboard Harrow had set up beside the fireplace. At the center was a sketch of the house's layout, with red threads connecting names, times, and events. 5 figures, 5 lies, 5 motives, but only one murder. Everett protects the house, she said. He could have locked that door from the inside using an old servant's passage, hidden the tray, removed the card. But that doesn't explain the music. Unless Jonas, or someone else, played it deliberately. Harrow shook his head. He's clumsy. You said it yourself. His lies shift every time. He can't carry a plan like that. Then Greta, she's steady, and she knows how to clean silver. But she's too open, too willing to talk now. Which leaves Lily. They both looked at the mirror on the far wall of the study. A long crack now split the center, unnoticed until this moment. She knew something, Harrow said, heard something, and someone scared her enough to silence her. Lenora turned slowly toward the door. "We need to ask her what she saw," she said. "Truly saw." But Lily was already gone, and upstairs the red room door had just clicked shut again. The echo of the red room door clicking shut rolled down the staircase like a gunshot. Harrow and Lenora were moving before they spoke. No alarm, no panic, just cold, immediate purpose. Harrow reached the landing first, hand poised over the doorknob, but it turned easily beneath his grip. Unlocked. The room was still. Candlelight flickered faintly against the peeling crimson wallpaper. Lily stood in the center of the room facing the fireplace, unmoving. She didn't turn at first, not even when Harrow stepped inside. "I heard it again," she said softly. "The music," she nodded. "Just now, clear as anything. It stopped the moment I walked in." Lenora shut the door behind them. "Why did you come back here, Lily?" Lily turned slowly to face them, her eyes damp but steady. "Because it's where it started." "What started?" She took a breath. "Marcus called me in 2 nights before he died. Said he'd found something. He showed me a letter, old paper, brittle. Said it was written by Eleanor. She claimed someone in the family had betrayed her, that she knew she'd be killed. He asked me not to tell anyone. Said he didn't trust them." "Did you see what he did with the letter?" "He tucked it behind the portrait of his grandfather in the study. Said no one would look there." Lenora glanced at Harrow, then moved quickly down the hall. Harrow waited, watching Lily. "Did you see anyone else in the room with him that night?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I heard Everett's voice, arguing with him. But when I peeked through the keyhole, there was no one there. Just Marcus pacing, shouting at thin air. It was always the same. Echoes of arguments no one else could confirm, whispers of figures in mirrors, reflections that didn't belong." Harrow felt the weight of it. This wasn't just deceit. It was performance. A carefully orchestrated story, mirrored again and again across decades. Lenora returned a few minutes later, holding a folded sheet of parchment sealed with wax, so ancient it crumbled at the edges. She placed it on the mantelpiece and opened it with a gloved hand. The letter was dated October 6th, 1925. "To whoever finds this, I know they will say I vanished of my own will, or that madness took me, but I am of sound mind. It is not the house that is cursed. It is the bloodline. I have found proof of an arrangement. My brother conspired with a man named Everett to rid me of my claim. I fear what they will do, but I will not run. Let them believe they've won. The Queen watches still." Signed, Eleanor Cranford. Harrow read it twice. It had the air of desperation, yes, but also conviction. If it was real, then it wasn't just a family drama gone stale. It was a confession and an accusation, but more than that, it was a thread, one that someone had wanted buried. The discovery spread quickly. Within hours, the local constabulary arrived in force. The superintendent, a wide man with a narrow mind, took one glance at the letter and pronounced it the missing puzzle piece. "Clear motive," he declared. "The butler, generational loyalty twisted into obsession. He protected a lie and Marcus found the truth. That's why he was killed." Everett, for his part, took the arrest without resistance. He stood like a statue as they read him his rights. He didn't protest, didn't blink. As he was led down the drive, he turned once to look back at the house, not with anger or fear, but with a kind of solemn relief. Harrow watched it all unfold, expression unreadable. "You're not convinced," Lenora said quietly. He shook his head. "It fits too well, too soon." He had motive, opportunity. Yes, but no fear. Harrow folded the letter. He knew the story wasn't over. He's been protecting it for years. maybe even believing it. But he didn't write this letter. Look here, this ink. It's too dark. It hasn't aged like the paper. Lenora frowned. So it's forged? Planted, recently. Someone knew where Marcus hid it. Someone wanted it found. They walked the halls, again that evening, long after the constables had driven off with Everett. The house had quieted, but not in the way a place rests after a storm. It was the silence of bated breath, of a performance waiting for the next cue. Greta was in the kitchen smoking a cigarette out the window. She offered nothing when questioned about the letter. Jonas had locked himself in his shed. Lily refused to leave her room. And still none of them celebrated Everett's arrest. No sense of safety, no satisfaction. If anything, the tension had deepened. Harrow sat alone in the Red Room, staring at the fireplace, the cards, the hollow mirror. He played back every conversation, every contradiction. And then it struck him. The Queen of Spades was missing. Again, he rose quickly, checked the compartment behind the mirror. The bundle was still there, all 5 cards. But there was now a 6th. Same card, same perfect condition, but the corner was smudged. Fresh ink, still soft. Harrow touched it with his glove and lifted the edge. A single word had been scrawled in a curling hand across the back. Soon, he backed away from the mantel, heart thudding once, not from fear, but from recognition. The letter was bait. Everett was the distraction, and somewhere inside the house, someone had just marked the next victim. The victory was false. The game had only just begun. The new card sat heavy in Harrow's coat pocket as he descended the stairs once more. His footsteps echoed too loudly in the empty corridors. Outside, the wind had risen again, battering the old house as if trying to knock it from the cliffside entirely. But the greater storm was inside now, clever, deliberate, and waiting. He found Lenora in the study, bent over the map of connections still pinned to the corkboard. She looked up the moment he entered. They found another card, he said quietly. Same as before. Her eyes narrowed. Where? Red Room, behind the mirror. It wasn't there earlier. She crossed the room and closed the door. They're toying with us now, she murmured. They're escalating. Whoever's behind this wants to finish what was started. That card was fresh, ink still soft. Then someone came back to the scene after Everett was arrested. Or never left. Lenora looked back at the board. There's something we're not seeing. Harrow's gaze landed on one of the older clippings tacked beside the map. A yellowed article from 1950, the death of Thomas Raines. He fell from the balcony, he said, claimed he saw a woman in black. Lenora nodded. A soldier, fought in the war, came back and married into the Cranford family, one of Eleanor's distant cousins. He moved to the bookshelf and pulled a tattered volume from the bottom shelf. Cranford Genealogy, 1832 to 1970. The index was smudged but legible. Thomas Raines was listed under spouses, non-heirs. His wife had been Margaret Fry Cranford. Fry, Lenora said, coming up beside him. Madeline Fry, the woman who drowned in the fountain in 1975. And she was listed as a cousin, too. Harrow tapped the page. We've been looking at the staff, but the curse doesn't follow the house. It follows the bloodline. They spent the next 2 hours digging through the archives in the old library, a long-forgotten room behind the east wing, thick with dust and untouched for years. The records were scattered, incomplete, but patterns emerged. Eleanor, Thomas, Margaret, Madeline, all Cranford blood. All died or disappeared within that cursed window, every 25 years, always in October, always with the card. Harrow laid out the old family tree across the library table. It isn't random, it's targeted. Someone has been eliminating the line. But Marcus was the last heir, Lenora said. There's no one left to kill. He stared down at the tree, eyes scanning downward. Not the last. One name near the bottom caught his eye, faint, scribbled beside an asterisk. Elizabeth Fry Cranford, born 2002, no known parentage, raised by guardians. He sat back slowly. Fry, she's connected. Lenora's voice was quiet. Lily. The name clicked into place like the final cog in a long-forgotten mechanism. They returned to her room, knocking first, then entering when no reply came. The room was empty but not abandoned. A shawl was draped over the chair, a teacup, still warm on the windowsill. A small box sat half open on the bed. Inside it, folded letters, some yellowed, others recent. Harrow opened one and recognized Marcus's handwriting. To my cousin Elizabeth, you don't know who you are yet, but I do. And when I'm gone, you'll need to decide what to become. There's power in the name Cranford, but also ruin. Below it, another letter, from Everett. I've kept your secret as long as I could, but the past has returned. Be careful. He's watching. He always has been. Lenora whispered. She didn't just see the curse, Harrow. She was the reason it continued. She's the last Cranford, Harrow said, and someone wants her gone. A sudden bang echoed from upstairs, the sound of a door slammed, wood splintering. They raced up the stairs to the red room. The door had been thrown open, candles overturned, one of the drapes torn down. Lily stood in the corner, shaking, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Jonah stood in the center of the room, panting. One hand was bloody, his knuckles raw. He froze when he saw them. She lied, he growled. All this time, she lied. Lenora moved first, blocking his path. Step back, she said, calm but firm. She's one of them, the family, the ones who poisoned this place. I've been tending this house longer than she's been alive. I know what it is. I know what it does. You don't know anything, Harrow said, voice sharp now. You've watched the stories repeat and thought you could stop it. But this wasn't about stopping anything. This was about control. Jonas's eyes were wide now, furious and full of confusion. He was going to give it all to her, all of it. Marcus wrote a new will, said the house would go to Elizabeth Fry, said he'd found the last branch worth saving. And then he locked himself up there, muttering about cleansing the bloodline. Did you kill him? Harrow asked. Jonas faltered. No, I didn't. Did you take the card? I found it, days ago, in the greenhouse. Someone had left it in the potting bench. I didn't know what it meant at first. I just wanted it to stop. Who planted the letter? Lenora asked. Jonas blinked. What letter? The one that got Everett arrested. I never saw any letter. Harrow stared at him, realizing the man was telling the truth. Jonas had acted out of fear, obsession, but not malice, not with planning, not with design. He turned slowly to Lily. She hadn't moved. She looked pale, yes, but not panicked. In fact, her eyes were clearer than they had been since the day of the murder. You knew, he said. She blinked. You knew who you were. You found the name in the records, maybe even confronted Marcus about it, and he welcomed you in, called you blood. The house was going to be yours. I didn't want it, she whispered. But someone else did, Lenora finished. Someone else thought you shouldn't have it. Someone who still believes the name Cranford should die with this house. Silence. Then Lily's voice, soft, sure. Greta. Harrow didn't speak. He moved past her and down the stairs in 3 long strides. Lenora followed, Lily behind. The kitchen door was swinging open, the back gate unlatched. Greta was gone, and inside her room, tucked between folded linens, was a tray, silver, ornately edged, blood still staining the underside, the murder weapon, finally found, and beside it, an envelope, a letter in Everett's handwriting, addressed not to Lily, but to Greta. You said you'd protect her. You swore to Eleanor's daughter that no harm would come to the last of her blood. But now I fear you've lost sight of that. If Marcus has to die to keep the secret, so be it. But leave the girl out of it. She is not her mother." Harrow let the letter fall. The past had never left Cranford House. It had simply waited, quiet, patient, and ready to strike again. The silver tray sat under the gaslight like a corpse on display, quiet, damning, heavy with meaning. Greta's absence made it worse. She hadn't denied it, hadn't offered some trembling defense or thrown herself at their feet. She had simply vanished. Harrow stood by the window, arms folded tight. The sea below was violent tonight, thrashing against the rocks like it wanted to swallow the entire cliffside. Lenora leaned against the mantel behind him, reading the letter again. "She was meant to protect Lily," she murmured. "That's what Everett says." "She did," Harrow replied, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. "She protected her by killing Marcus. You think she did it for Lily?" "I think she did it because of Lily, because Everett told her to keep the Cranford line alive, and Marcus wanted to bury it." Lenora paced once, then stopped short of the door. "But she left," she said. "She ran. Doesn't match the Greta we've seen. The one who smokes in silence, who sharpens knives with her eyes. Why run now?" "She doesn't think she's running," Harrow said, turning. "She thinks she's fulfilling something." The next morning came gray and cold. No word from the constables yet. The roads were still blocked from the night's storm. Harrow gathered the household in the study. What remained of it? Everett still in custody. Greta missing. Jonas sat silent, hands in his lap, refusing to meet Lily's eyes. Lily stood to the side of the fireplace, rigid but composed. Harrow faced them with a calm resolve. "I want to try something," he said simply. Lenora, beside him, raised an eyebrow. "You're going to tell them, aren't you?" "Yes," Harrow said, "but not the truth, not all of it." He stepped forward and turned to Lily. "Greta's dead." The air went still. "What?" she whispered. "She threw herself into the sea last night. We found a footprint trail leading to the southern cliff, and a scarf caught on the rocks below. The tray was beside it." He watched her closely. Her hands trembled, but her eyes stayed dry. Lenora followed his lead. "She left a note, blamed herself, said she failed to protect you." "No." Lily's voice cracked. "No, she wouldn't. She promised." "She promised to keep you safe," Harrow said. "But she also knew Everett's letter would surface eventually. She knew what she'd done would come out." Jonas rose slowly, jaw slack. "She's dead." Harrow didn't answer. He was watching Lily now. Her breathing had changed, quick, shallow. Her gaze flicked not to Harrow but to Lenora. And that was it. She hadn't looked shocked. She hadn't looked grief-stricken. She had looked worried. Not for Greta, but for what Greta had left behind. Harrow took a slow step toward her. "You knew what she did, didn't you?" Lily shook her head. "You didn't ask who found her, or what the note said. You didn't even ask if it was true." Because you already knew." Lenora moved behind Lily now, her voice gentler. "When did you find out?" "That she'd killed Marcus. Was it before or after you saw the card again?" Lily's mask cracked, not all at once, but in a soft, subtle sag of the shoulders, a flicker in her eyes. She folded slowly into the armchair behind her, hands limp in her lap. "I didn't know she was going to do it," she whispered. "She didn't tell me." "But you guessed," Harrow said. "She came into my room the night he died. She was pale, shaking. I thought she'd been drinking. She sat down and said, 'It's done. You're safe now.' I thought she meant the will, that Marcus had finally agreed. I didn't understand what she meant until I saw the card again." She looked up now, helpless. "That's when I knew that she'd marked him." Lenora crouched beside her. Why didn't you say anything?" "I was scared," she said. "Not of Greta, not really, but of the house, of what it meant if I inherited it, if the bloodline didn't die with Marcus, if I was the last." "You want it out," Harrow said quietly. "I wanted it to end. I didn't ask her to kill him. I just wanted to leave." A soft knock interrupted them. One of the constables had arrived. He handed Harrow a small parcel, wrapped in damp cloth and tied with twine. "Washed up near the footpath below the cliffs," he said. "Thought it might be hers." Harrow opened it slowly. Inside, a leather-bound notebook. The pages inside were warped from salt water, but many remained intact. It wasn't Greta's handwriting, it was Everett's, a log, a detailed journal, pages and pages documenting the house's history, each death, each card, every suspect, every silenced name, and near the end, recent entries. She knows. Greta found the girl's birth certificate. It was sealed in the parish files under a false surname, but the bloodline is unmistakable. Marcus is becoming unstable. He's seeing her again, Eleanor, or thinks he is. If he changes the will, the others will not allow it. I told Greta to protect the girl no matter the cost, but I fear she took my words too far. Lenora took the notebook gently from Harrow's hand. "This isn't just a record," she said. "It's a confession." "No," Harrow said. "It's a prophecy." He knew how this would end. They sat in silence for a moment, each digesting what the book implied, not just about Marcus's death, but about the house itself. That the Cranford name wasn't cursed by fate or superstition, but by memory, by those who tried to control its future, by rewriting its past. Outside, the sea had calmed. The wind, for once, was still. And in that quiet, Harrow turned to Lily once more. "You're free to leave this place," he said softly. "But the question now is, will you?" She didn't answer, but in her silence there was no fear, only choice. Harrow didn't sleep that night. Neither did Lenora. The journal sat open on the table between them, pages fluttering in the cold draft slipping through the old window panes. Each line offered another sliver of insight into Everett's long watch over the Cranford legacy, a man who had seen himself not as a servant but as a sentinel. He had known what Marcus planned. He had known what Greta might do, and in his final entries he had all but named her, yet no one had noticed the most damning line. Not until Harrow read it again at dawn. "If the ledger falls into the wrong hands, it will be erased." He looked up from the page, frowning. "What ledger?" Lenora blinked. "I thought that meant this journal." Look at the date. That line was written days before Marcus's death. He meant something else. They searched the house again, the east wing, the cellar, the servants' quarters, but no book matched the description, not even in the library where so many of Everett's notes had been hidden before. Just dust, decay, and boxes of rotting paper. It wasn't until they passed through the butler's pantry, small, narrow, always overlooked, that Harrow paused. There, set neatly behind the wine rack, was a wooden panel slightly ajar. Inside, tucked among cleaning ledgers and wine accounts, was a thin, unmarked volume bound in faded black leather. The real ledger. He opened it slowly. Inside, in Everett's exacting script, was a meticulous record of names, dates, and actions. Every family conflict, every dispute about inheritance, every quiet payoff or manipulated record dating back nearly a century. It didn't read like an archive. It read like strategy. At the center of it all, Eleanor Cranford's removal from the will in 1925. A false diagnosis of hysteria signed by a now-dead physician. The arrangements that followed. Land sold under assumed names. Property divided between cousins. Names quietly erased. "This ledger is the nail in the coffin," Lenora said. "It proves the conspiracy was real. Not just whispers, not just ghost stories. They returned it to the study for safekeeping, locking it in the drawer beneath the old writing desk. Only Harrow and Lenora had the key, which Harrow slipped into his pocket before they left the room. The morning sun barely broke through the heavy fog that pressed down on the moors. The constables had returned to question Lily again, this time more gently. Greta was still missing, but sightings had been reported in the nearby village. A woman in a heavy coat lingering near the churchyard, asking about the sea. She was still close, and she knew by now that her trail had been uncovered. At midday, Harrow returned to the study. The drawer was open. The ledger was gone. He didn't speak. He didn't shout. He simply stood there, staring at the gaping space where the book had been. Lenora found him there minutes later. "It's gone." She didn't ask how. She only asked, "Who?" They questioned everyone again. Jonas was too rattled to speak coherently, but his fear seemed real. Lily denied ever knowing about the ledger. The constables hadn't even been told it existed yet. Only Harrow, Lenora, and possibly Greta. "She came back," Lenora said quietly. "Last night, while we were all sleeping." "She had the motive," Harrow muttered, "but not the knowledge of where it was. Unless Everett told her." Harrow clenched his jaw. "Or someone else. Read the journal." They returned to Everett's notes, scanning every page, every corner, every margin, and there, buried in a half-erased line at the bottom of a page, dated 2 years ago, were the words, "If she ever finds out, hide the ledger in the pantry. Keep the wine ledger on top. It will deter her." "She," Lenora said slowly, "not Greta, Lily." Harrow looked at the empty drawer again. "She took it," he said. "Why?" He didn't answer. Instead, he walked quickly down the hall and into the east wing. Lily's door was open. Her trunk was gone. The bedsheets stripped. The wardrobe empty. Only a note remained, pinned beneath a single playing card. "Queen of Spades." The note read, "You were right about everything. But this house doesn't belong to me or to anyone. I'm ending it on my terms. Tell Everett I'm sorry." The ink was fresh. "She's running," Lenora said. "She's going to destroy it." "No," Harrow murmured, staring at the card. "She already has." He scanned the handwriting again, carefully formed, deliberate, as though she'd rehearsed this note 100 times. Lenora whispered, "If she burns the ledger, we lose the only record of what really happened." "She's not trying to protect Greta," Harrow said. "She's trying to protect the future. Burn the ledger and no one inherits the sins. No more names. No more ghosts." He stared down at the Queen of Spades, fingers curling around it. "She's not running from the truth," he said. "She's erasing it." And somewhere beyond the moor, as the wind began to howl through the distant trees once more, the last light of the Cranford legacy flickered toward darkness, its evidence vanishing with the girl who no longer wished to carry its name. The fog had thickened by late afternoon, settling over the Cranford estate like a burial shroud. Even the sea had gone still, eerily quiet, as if listening. Harrow stood by the old sundial in the garden, eyes on the winding road that vanished into gray. Somewhere down that road, Lily was walking away from a legacy she never asked for, carrying with her the one document that could either condemn or cleanse the Cranford name. And now it was likely ash. Lenora approached from the house, coat wrapped tight, boots crunching over the frost-bitten gravel. "The constables are circling the area, but if she's smart, she'll stay off the main road." "She's smart," Harrow said, "and tired of being followed." "She may have destroyed the ledger already," he nodded. "Then there's nothing left to protect, not for her." She looked at him. "But there's still something left to destroy. For someone else." That thought had begun to bloom uneasily in Harrow's mind hours ago. Who else knew about Lily? Who else had watched Greta disappear, had remained silent when the ledger vanished? Jonas had said nothing since the tray was found. The others had accepted Everett's arrest too easily. And then there was Everett himself, sitting in a jail cell, silent, watchful, waiting, not out of guilt, but out of strategy. Harrow turned sharply. "We need to check the shed. Jonas's." They crossed the yard quickly, cutting through the mist. The tool shed loomed ahead, an old stone outbuilding leaning precariously against the slope of the hill. Harrow reached for the latch, but it was already ajar. Inside, the air smelled of rust and damp straw. Rakes and spades lined the walls, and in the far corner sat Jonas's cot, half covered with an oilskin blanket. Atop it, a folded coat, and underneath, nothing, no boots, no satchel. He was gone. A glint caught Harrow's eye. On the small workbench near the door, a set of keys, metal tags still dangling, house keys, cellar keys, all left behind, and one more item, a compass, ornate, old, but cracked clean through the glass. Lenora whispered, "He wouldn't leave that." "No," Harrow said, "he didn't." The scream came from the house. They ran, back through the mist, up the steps, through the front doors. Greta stood in the main hall, her hands bloodied, eyes wild, breath ragged. She stumbled forward before collapsing into Harrow's arms. He's in the cellar," she gasped. "I tried. I didn't mean to." Lenora knelt beside her. "What happened?" "I thought he was gone. I came back through the garden, saw the door open. Jonas, he was waiting. Said I'd betrayed the house, said I'd failed Eleanor. He had a knife." Harrow was already moving, heart hammering. The cellar door yawned open near the back pantry, descending into old stone steps carved into the cliff itself. The air grew colder with every step. The light bulb above flickered once, then held. Jonas lay sprawled across the floor, blood pooled beneath him, a heavy iron rod cast aside. Not far from his outstretched hand was the knife, and in the center of the cellar, an old wooden trunk. The lock was broken, splintered. Inside were papers, photographs, even a half-charred journal. Another one. Harrow crouched beside it. Pages fluttered loose beneath his fingers. Names again, times, schedules, not just family history, movements, observations, surveillance. Lenora arrived behind him, breath caught. "What is this?" "Jonas's own ledger," Harrow said quietly. He wasn't just a groundskeeper. He was documenting the whole household. He knew where everyone was, what they were doing. He was watching all of us. She took the book from him, flipping through the entries. "This one's from last week. Lily in the chapel again, praying for strength, afraid. She doesn't know I'm listening." She turned another page. "Greta sharpens her carving blade in the kitchen, alone, furious, keeps muttering Everett's name." Another page. "Harrow returned to the Red Room, left with a new card. How does he keep finding them?" "He was obsessed," Harrow said. "Not with killing anyone, but with control." "So why did he attack Greta?" "Because Lily burned the ledger, and he believed Greta let her." They returned upstairs slowly. Greta had been moved to the drawing room, a constable seated nearby, watching her carefully. Her eyes followed Harrow as he entered, searching him. "I didn't mean to kill him," she said softly. "I grabbed the first thing I could." He nodded. "You did what you had to." She looked down at her hands. He was trying to finish it. Said Lily should have died instead of Eleanor, that the name had to vanish entirely, that Everett betrayed the family by protecting her. "And you believed Everett." "I did," she said. "I still do." Harrow left the room without another word. In the corridor, Lenora leaned against the wall, eyes unfocused. "That's two dead now, one missing, and the only thing we know for sure is that someone still wants this house quiet." "It won't be quiet," Harrow said. "Not anymore." Lenora looked at him. "There's something else, isn't there?" He nodded once. "Jonas didn't write that last entry, the one about me finding the card." "What do you mean?" The handwriting's wrong. I checked. It's close, but the pressure is heavier. Hesitant. Someone copied him. Lenora's eyes widened. Someone planted that entry, and planted the trunk. Jonas had secrets, yes, but that notebook, that was someone else tying up loose ends, making sure Jonas couldn't defend himself. Then Greta didn't kill him in defense. She did, Harrow said, but she wasn't meant to survive. The realization fell between them like thunder. Someone lured her into that cellar, Lenora whispered. They thought she'd die, just like Jonas. 2 birds, 1 stone. Then whoever wrote that final entry is still watching us, and still 1 step ahead. The shadows along the hall lengthened. Outside, the mist had thickened again. The house, battered, bruised, and full of ghosts, remained impossibly quiet. But the silence now wasn't peace. It was the hush before the next strike. The house felt heavier that morning, weighed down by unseen eyes and whispered secrets. Harrow moved through the corridors with a deliberate calm, though beneath his composed exterior, the pieces of the puzzle stirred relentlessly. Every room he passed seemed to hold a memory, a fragment of a story waiting for its moment to reveal itself. Lenora joined him in the study, where the remains of the ledger lay scattered on the floor, pages curling at the edges, some smeared with soot and moisture. Yet the destruction hadn't been total. Fragments remained, carefully hidden, overlooked. Harrow knelt, sifting through the debris, eyes sharp for anything out of place. His fingers paused on a small scrap of paper, no bigger than a playing card, tucked between the charred pages. It was a receipt, faintly embossed with a merchant's seal, dated just 2 weeks before Marcus's death. "Look at this," Harrow said, holding it up to the light. "A purchase from the local apothecary." Lenora leaned closer, examining the faint ink. "Poisons? Remedies?" "Neither," Harrow replied. "It's for laudanum, a tincture of opium, prescribed for anxiety and pain." Marcus was under a lot of stress. Exactly, but here's what's curious. The prescription was made out to L. Fry. Lenora's gaze flickered. "Lily." Harrow nodded. She'd been visiting the apothecary in secret. Lenora's fingers brushed the torn edge of another page nearby, stained and sticky. She picked it up carefully, a pressed flower, a faded violet. "A symbol of mourning," she murmured. Harrow's mind raced back to the letters, the whispered stories, the strange encounters with Lily. She was hiding something deeper than just her identity, something entwined with pain, loss, and perhaps guilt. They retraced the steps of the household's last days, cross-referencing journals, notes, and interviews. It was then that Harrow noticed something others had missed, a subtle but persistent reference to the garden's eastern arbor, a forgotten alcove where Eleanor was said to have spent her final days. The garden had been tended, but neglected in corners, and the arbor was one of those, overgrown, shadowed, almost hidden beneath twisting vines. Harrow and Lenora ventured outside, the air crisp with the scent of earth and damp leaves. As they pushed past brambles, the arbor emerged, a skeletal frame of twisted iron and withered roses. At its center lay a small iron box, rusty but intact. Harrow pried it open, revealing a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon now faded to gray. Letters, dozens of them, written in delicate script, addressed simply, "To my dearest." They were Eleanor's letters, dated just before her disappearance in 1925. But they weren't to any family member. Instead, they were addressed to a man named Everett. The revelation hit hard. Everett, the butler, was not just a loyal servant. He was Eleanor's confidant, possibly her lover. One letter described a desperate plan to protect the family name, but at a terrible cost. Another spoke of betrayal, of a shadow within the house that no one could trust. Eleanor's handwriting trembled in places, revealing fear and resolve. Lenora looked up sharply. "This changes everything." Everett was involved from the very beginning. not just an observer but an active participant. Harrow's gaze darkened. And he's been protecting more than just a name. He's been guarding secrets that someone still fears will come to light. Their attention was drawn to a final letter, sealed with a wax emblem, a black spade. It read, "If this reaches you, the time has come. The truth will set us free, or it will drown us all. Trust no one, especially those who claim to protect you." Harrow felt the weight of those words, heavy and chilling. Back inside, the household gathered uneasily. Lily returned that evening, pale but determined. Harrow confronted her with the letters, watching her reaction closely. Her hands trembled as she held one, eyes flickering with recognition and pain. "I never knew," she whispered. "Everett, he was the one person I thought I could trust." Lenora stepped forward gently. "But he kept things from you. He shaped the story to his own design." Harrow looked around at the faces, the weary, the guarded, the desperate. The pattern was clear now. The curse wasn't just a superstition or a cycle of random deaths. It was a carefully constructed narrative, spun by those who wielded power in shadows. Each death, each disappearance, was a move in a deadly game, played to preserve secrets, to control legacies. And the key to breaking it lay in the truth hidden among these letters. As the night deepened, Harrow sat alone with the fragile papers spread before him, understanding at last that the past was not a distant ghost. It was a living, breathing force, one that would not rest until every secret was uncovered and every betrayal avenged. The letters lay spread across the table like pieces of a fractured mirror, each reflecting a fragment of a secret long buried beneath years of silence and careful deception. Harrow's eyes traced Eleanor's trembling script, the desperation in each word echoing in the cold room. The more he read, the clearer the true depth of the tragedy became. Not just a family's fall from grace, but a soul's descent into darkness. Lenora watched him quietly, sensing the weight that was settling over him. "What have you found?" she asked softly. Harrow didn't look up. "Eleanor's final letter is the key. She wasn't just afraid of losing the estate or the family name. She was terrified of something far more personal." Lenora leaned in. "Tell me." She wrote about a secret, one that shattered her world. The birth of a child, a daughter born not to her, but to her sister. Lenora's breath caught. "A hidden heir?" "Not quite." Harrow's voice was low, measured. "The child was taken, hidden away to protect her from the darkness that had begun to poison the family." "Darkness?" Harrow hesitated, then continued. "Eleanor believed that a curse wasn't just superstition, that it was real and hereditary, that something malignant was passed through the bloodline, twisting those who carried it." Lenora shook her head slowly. "But how did that lead to murder?" "That child," Harrow said, eyes narrowing, "was Lily, or rather, a version of Lily no one knew, conceived in secrecy, adopted out, kept safe from the family's madness." Lenora's voice was barely a whisper. "So the house's curse was a self-fulfilling prophecy." "Exactly. The family fought to control the bloodline, to prevent the curse from spreading. That's why Marcus was desperate to rewrite the will, to keep Lily from inheriting." She looked at him, disbelief heavy in her eyes. "But Greta, Jonas, Everett, how do they fit into this?" "They were enforcers, guardians of the secret," Harrow explained. "Everett took on the burden of protecting the child, of maintaining the facade. Greta and Jonas were caught between loyalty and fear." Lenora's gaze drifted to Lily, who stood silently by the window, lost in thought. "Lily knew this," Harrow said, "and that knowledge tore her apart. She wanted to escape the legacy but was haunted by it. That's why she destroyed the ledger. She believed erasing the past would end the curse. Lenora nodded slowly. But someone else didn't want the curse to end. Yes. Harrow's eyes darkened. The real villain, the one orchestrating the chaos. He turned to the gathered household, his voice firm. The true motive behind these crimes isn't greed or power, it's fear. Fear of the unknown within their own blood. Fear that the curse was real and that it would consume them all. Lily finally spoke, her voice steady but cold. It was Greta. She believed the curse was a punishment for our family's sins and thought that only by purging the bloodline could we be saved. The room fell silent. Greta was willing to kill, Harrow said, because she believed she was saving everyone. The murders, the threats, they were her twisted form of mercy. Lenora shuddered. A mercy killing born of madness. Harrow nodded. A madness rooted in a myth so deeply embedded that it destroyed lives. The tension was thick as the house itself, shadows flickering with the fading light. Harrow looked at each person present, their faces marked by pain, confusion, and the bitter truth of betrayal. This is more than a family tragedy, he said quietly. It's a psychological labyrinth where love and fear became indistinguishable. Greta's actions, terrible as they are, stem from a place of fractured loyalty. Lily's eyes met his. And what about me? Am I the curse or the cure? Harrow smiled faintly, a rare softness in his gaze. You're neither. You're the choice. The one who can break the cycle, or let it consume what's left. Outside, the wind rose again, whispering through the broken windows as if carrying the voices of the past. Inside, the heavy burden of truth settled over Cranford House, setting the stage for a reckoning that would test the limits of forgiveness and the power of legacy. The fog hung low that evening, thick as wool, pressing against the windows of Cranford House like a living thing. The lamplight barely pushed it back. Inside, the silence felt more pointed than peaceful, as though the house itself had gone still in anticipation of what was to come. Harrow stood in the old drawing room, one hand resting lightly on the mantel. The others were elsewhere, Lily with Lenora upstairs, the constables outside, sweeping the garden again for evidence long since buried or blown away. Greta remained under watch, her movements contained, but her mind still elusive. She hadn't spoken since that night in the cellar. No protest, no remorse. That silence, Harrow knew, spoke volumes. He had spent the day going through every letter, every journal, every whisper of the past that had bled its way into the present, and at last, the pattern that had begun to emerge days ago solidified into something undeniable. The truth wasn't complicated. It was simply hidden, buried under 100 years of guilt, fear, and clever storytelling. He reached into the drawer and retrieved a card, one of the last remaining playing cards Everett had used to mark the Cranford deaths. The Queen of Spades, Eleanor's card, Lily's card, and now, perhaps, someone else's. Footsteps echoed in the corridor beyond. Harrow turned slowly as Greta entered, flanked by a constable. Her coat had been returned to her shoulders, though she wore it like a mantle of thorns. Tight, rigid, unnatural. Her eyes found Harrow, but her expression gave nothing. "You asked for me," she said simply. The constable nodded and stepped back. "I did," Harrow replied. He gestured to the seat by the fire. "It's time." Greta didn't move at first. Then she stepped forward, each footfall deliberate. She lowered herself into the chair and folded her hands in her lap, eyes never leaving his. "You know what I did," she said. "I do," Harrow replied, "but I need you to say it." Her jaw tightened. "Why? So you can parade my confession before the others? I've already given up everything that matters." "No," he said softly, "because I want to understand. Not just what you did, but why." Greta's fingers flexed once. The fire cracked faintly beside them. Then she looked away, toward the curtained window, and began to speak. I was Eleanor's nurse, not her maid, not her servant, her guardian. When she began to see the signs, hallucinations, tremors, violent mood swings, she told me she feared what was inside her, not madness, not illness, but something inherited, something ancient. The curse, Harrow said. Greta nodded. She wasn't the first. Her mother died babbling about spirits in the walls. Her uncle drowned himself in the reflecting pool, and Eleanor, she knew she was next. She begged Everett to remove her from the line of succession, to hide her name, to send her child away. Lily. She didn't even get to name her, Greta said, eyes shining now. Everett arranged everything, sealed the records, paid the parish, lied to the family, and when Eleanor finally gave in to the sea, he swore that the bloodline would never again touch this house, that it would end. But it didn't, Harrow said. No, she agreed bitterly, because Marcus found out, or thought he had. He started making plans to change the will, to bring Lily back. He called it redemption, but all I saw was danger. What if the curse came with her? What if the madness bloomed again? So you killed him. I saved her, Greta snapped. I saved all of us. You struck him with the silver tray, Harrow said, the one that disappeared until we found it by the cliffs. I left it there, she said, to make them think I'd gone with it. And when Lily ran, you followed, to make sure she didn't tell the constables. She wasn't supposed to understand. She was supposed to walk away, to disappear. Harrow let the silence linger. Greta's breathing was heavier now, her posture slowly unraveling. But someone else was watching, he said finally. Jonas. She froze. He kept his own ledger, notes, observations. He may have believed in the curse too, but he also believed in control. And when Lily burned Everett's journal, he took it personally. Greta's voice was barely audible. He tried to kill me. And someone else used that moment to tie off a loose end, Harrow said. They planted false notes in Jonas's journal, faked the entry about me, staged the scene, because they wanted you dead too. He took the Queen of Spades from his coat and placed it gently on the table between them. Greta stared at it for a long moment. Her lip trembled. Everett, she said quietly. He made the cards. He made them to mark each loss, Harrow said, but someone else has been using them. As judgment, Greta looked up sharply. Then you know who. I do, Harrow said, and so do you. The doors opened. Lily entered. She stood in the threshold, shoulders squared, hands calm. The room seemed to hush around her. Greta's voice broke. You were never cursed. No, Lily said gently, but you were. Greta rose suddenly, chest heaving. You don't understand. I do, Lily cut in. I understand that you spent your whole life guarding a lie, a story about a curse that let you justify murder. You didn't kill Marcus for me. You did it for the story, to keep it from changing. You needed to believe there was something wrong with us. Tears slid down Greta's cheeks. I loved Eleanor, she whispered, and she died afraid because no one told her the truth, Lily said. There was no curse, just fear and silence. Greta collapsed back into the chair, her strength gone. The constable stepped forward. Harrow remained silent as Greta was gently escorted away. The card still lay on the table, its black spade gleaming under the firelight. Lily sat down across from him. So, she said, it's done. He shook his head slowly. Number, it's beginning. She tilted her head, watching him. You're the one left now, Harrow said, the last piece of the story. Lily looked down at the card, then swept it gently into her palm. Then maybe it's time to stop playing their game. Outside, the wind had shifted. For the first time in days, the fog began to lift, revealing the long road that led away from Cranford House. And somewhere at the end of that road, A future waited that no longer belonged to ghosts. The road beyond Cranford House stretched long and silver beneath the lifting fog, as if beckoning Lily to a world untouched by secrets and grief. Inside, the house had grown quiet, not the oppressive, haunted silence it once wore like a shroud, but something lighter. The constables had taken Greta away without resistance. The ledgers were sealed, the letters preserved. The weight of a century had finally begun to ease, but Harrow couldn't leave. He remained in the study as twilight deepened, staring at the empty chair where Greta had confessed her sins. Lenora had urged him to rest, but he couldn't. Not yet. Something still tugged at the edges of his thoughts, elusive and unresolved. The final card lay on the desk beside his hand, the Queen of Spades, and though the case appeared closed, he couldn't shake the sense that the deck was incomplete. He returned to the journals, not Everett's or Jonas's, but the letters from Eleanor. He read them again, line by line, slowly. The words blurred with familiarity, but a phrase struck him now with peculiar force. "He promised me Lily would never know." Harrow frowned. He flipped back 2 pages. He said the child must be hidden from the others, from himself, most of all. Himself. His chest tightened. It wasn't Everett. The realization came like a stone through glass, shattering, sudden, undeniable. He rose at once, heart pounding, and strode down the corridor with swift, silent steps, past the east wing and into the old chapel. The air inside was heavy with dust and candle wax, a place the family rarely visited anymore. But the scent of recent smoke lingered. A single candle still burned at the altar. Lily stood there, her back to him, arms folded, the final playing card balanced between 2 fingers. "You left it behind," she said without turning. "The Queen." "You read the letters again," he replied. "I did, and I saw it too, the same sentence." Her voice was flat, steady. "You were meant to see it," Harrow said. He wanted someone clever to find it, not too early, not too late. Now she turned, her face unreadable. "It wasn't Greta." "No," he said. "She believed she was protecting you, but she wasn't the one who manipulated everything." They stood in the shadows of the chapel, the truth finally breaking through the silence like sunlight through stained glass. "It was Everett," Lily said, but Harrow shook his head. It wasn't him, either. He protected you, hid the truth as long as he could. But the one who orchestrated everything, every death, every silence, every planted clue, was Marcus. She blinked. "That's impossible," she said. "Marcus is dead." "He is," Harrow said. "But the trap he left behind wasn't. Greta didn't kill him in a rage. She found him already dying, poisoned." Lily's breath caught. But the tray was staged. Everett had found the truth. He knew Marcus was unraveling everything, that he planned to use you as a pawn in his final play. So he confronted him. There was a struggle. Greta walked in too late. Marcus was already dying. Everett made her think she had caused it, to protect her, to protect you. Lily's hands trembled. "But the journal..." "Marcus forged it, or parts of it, planted entries to implicate others, orchestrated the game before he died, knowing Everett would try to cover it up. He wanted to destroy the family from within, not out of revenge, but because he believed in the curse. He was the one who started the legend," Lily whispered. "Not Eleanor, not Everett." "He cultivated it for years," Harrow said. "Fed it through whispers, rumors, even paid doctors and priests to confirm its signs. Everyone assumed Marcus was the heir holding the line together. In truth, he wanted to end it, and he planned it so thoroughly that it worked even after his death." Lily looked down at the Queen of Spades, her voice hollow. "He made us all pawns." "No," Harrow said quietly. He made you the final move. The candle flickered. You were the daughter of a hidden bloodline, the proof that the curse had survived, and he wanted to draw you back here, knowing what that knowledge would do to the house, to Greta, to Everett, to all of us. A long silence followed. Then why did he include me in the will? She asked. Why risk me inheriting anything? He didn't intend for you to inherit, Harrow said. He intended for you to destroy it, but you didn't. You chose to burn the past, not repeat it. She stepped forward now, her hand brushing the edge of the altar. So what now? Now, Harrow said, we let the curse die, not by hiding it, but by telling the truth. She nodded slowly, the firelight catching the edges of her face, but Harrow wasn't finished. There's one more thing, he said. Lily turned toward him again. The Queen of Spades wasn't the last card. He reached into his coat and pulled out the final one, not left on any body, not planted in any room, but sealed in a hidden envelope Everett had kept in the drawer beneath his bed. Harrow had found it only an hour earlier. It was the Joker, a card that didn't fit the others. A wild card, Marcus's card. Lily stared at it, eyes widening. That was Marcus's final play, Harrow said. The Joker isn't a victim, it's a maker of chaos. He saw himself as the one who would tear it all down, and if it worked, his ghost would live on in the ashes. She stared at the card for a long moment, then took it and held it over the candle. It curled, blackened, and finally crumbled to ash. Outside, the first stars pierced through the fog. Harrow said nothing more. He only watched as Lily turned towards the chapel doors and walked into the night, finally free of a game that had outlived its player. Morning came slowly to Cranford House, a soft light breaking through gauzy clouds, no longer choked by fog. The estate was still, the kind of stillness that came not from fear but from fatigue, the weary silence that followed storms. Harrow stood alone on the back terrace, coat wrapped tightly against the chill, watching the last of the constables pack away their equipment. It should have felt like an ending. Instead, it felt like an echo. Lily had gone at first light, leaving only a note behind. She hadn't said where, and Harrow hadn't asked. There was nothing left to say. The past she'd spent her life unknowingly circling had finally released her, burned to ash with the last card. She hadn't waited for anyone's permission. She had simply stepped through the broken gates and vanished into the world, as if she had never belonged to the house at all. But justice, Harrow knew, was rarely so clean. He made his way back inside, past the study, the drawing room, the once haunted halls that now stood stripped of their lies. In the chapel, the candle had burned low, its wax hardened, its light extinguished. The Joker card's ashes remained in the tray, a soft smear of gray like forgotten soot. Greta was in custody. Her confession, broken though it was, had sealed her fate. She would face trial, and with it the public scrutiny of the entire family's past. Already the papers were circling like carrion birds. The legend of the Cranford curse was reborn, now fed with blood and ink instead of whispered myth. But she hadn't been the true orchestrator, only a player. Willing, misled, and dangerous. Marcus's design had been thorough. Harrow could admire that, in a way. It wasn't just the murders, the clues, or the manipulation. It was the foresight. The way Marcus had weaponized the fears of everyone around him. The curse had never been real, but Marcus had made it real by treating it as a prophecy he would fulfill. And in doing so, he had ensured that even in death, he would control the narrative. But that control had slipped, and Harrow had found the thread he hadn't meant to leave. Back in the study, Harrow knelt before the hearth and removed the loose stone from beneath the floorboard. A place he had checked before, but not with the right eyes. Inside was a single item, a black envelope sealed with red wax. It bore no name, no address, but Harrow knew it was meant for him. He opened it carefully, unfolding the crisp page inside. The handwriting was Marcus's, neat, unhurried. "To the one clever enough to outplay me," it began. The letter was no confession. It was a monologue. Marcus, in death, spoke like a man who still expected applause. He described the planning, the layering of deceptions, the use of Everett's loyalty, Greta's instability, Jonas's self-righteousness. He had known how each would behave when pushed, how fear and guilt would drive them into roles he had pre-written. Even Lily, the unknowing heir, had been the keystone in his twisted architecture. "They believed in a curse," Marcus had written, "so I gave them one." But beneath the arrogance was something else, not madness, not hatred, something colder, emptiness. Marcus had felt nothing, no grief, no guilt. The curse hadn't been a myth to him, it had been an excuse, a way to unshackle himself from the burden of empathy, of morality. He had killed not out of passion, but from indifference, because the game was more interesting than the people in it. Harrow folded the letter and placed it in his coat. He stepped into the drawing room where Inspector Mallory stood at the window with a grim expression. "We've had the papers combing the will again," Mallory said. "Turns out Marcus altered more than we thought." Harrow raised a brow. "How so?" "There was a clause buried in a separate codicil. If Lily renounced the estate, which she has, ownership transfers not to a trustee, but to a private holding company Marcus created just before his death, one we now know he used to funnel funds and mask his activities." "Meaning?" Harrow asked. "Meaning Cranford House is legally owned by a shell corporation with no living signatories. The estate is in limbo. No one inherits it, no one can claim it. It's just abandoned." Harrow absorbed this quietly. Even from the grave, Marcus had ensured that the house would rot, that no one could reclaim it, that it would stand forever as a monument to a curse he had manufactured. "That's not justice," Mallory muttered. "No," Harrow agreed. "It's a ghost with good lawyers." They both fell silent. "You still think you won?" Mallory asked. Harrow didn't answer immediately. He crossed to the fireplace where the embers had long since gone cold. "I won the game," he said, "but Marcus made sure the board collapsed the moment I did." "You could have missed it," Mallory said. "You were close. That letter, the Joker card, anyone else might have walked away thinking Greta was the mastermind." Harrow nodded slowly. He counted on that. But he underestimated one thing. Mallory turned. "What's that?" Harrow looked toward the door, where sunlight now streamed in golden and warm. "He thought he was the only one who could see patterns," Harrow said. "But so could Lily. When she burned that card, she ended the narrative. That wasn't just grief. It was rejection. She refused to play her part." Mallory exhaled through his nose. "Shame the law can't punish a dead man." "No," Harrow agreed again, "but truth can haunt the living just as well." He walked to the front hall, coat trailing behind him. As he passed the grandfather clock, he paused briefly, then reached up and adjusted the minute hand, which had always stuck just a hair behind. The tick resumed, a soft, clean rhythm. Outside, the land sloped gently toward the sea, which shimmered like glass. There would be no trial for Marcus Cranford, no headlines bearing his name. But the truth was written now, in letters, in ash, in silence, finally broken. And as Harrow stepped into the day, the house behind him stood taller than before, not as a monument to a curse, but as the place where the last lie ended. The gravel crunched softly beneath Harrow's boots as he made his way down the winding path from Cranford House. The mist was all but gone now, burned off by the pale warmth of a reluctant sun, but the smell of salt and damp stone still lingered in the air. Behind him the manor stood solemn and watchful, its crooked chimneys and gabled roof cutting sharp lines against the morning sky. It no longer loomed with menace, but with memory. He didn't look back. In his pocket, the black envelope lay folded neatly beside his notebook. The Joker card's ashes had been left in the chapel, just as Lily had left the past behind her. He told himself it was over, that the dead had spoken, that every secret was laid bare. But even as his feet took him farther from the house, his thoughts circled a single, stubborn splinter in his mind. A detail so small, so easy to miss, and yet it itched at the edge of clarity. He paused at the gate, glancing back once. The weather vane atop the house creaked in the breeze, slowly turning toward the west. And with it came a faint echo, not a sound exactly, but a recollection, fragile and half-forgotten. The clock. The grandfather clock in the front hall, whose hands he had adjusted before leaving. He had fixed it, hadn't he? Moved the minute hand forward by one small tick, but now he remembered the moment too clearly. The hand had stuck, not sluggishly, not from age, but as if resisting. And underneath the tick, had there been another sound? He frowned, then turned and made his way down the hill toward the waiting car. Mallory was already there, leaning against the hood with 2 cups of steaming coffee and an expression that tried to be casual. "You look like a man who's not done thinking," Mallory said. "I rarely am." They stood in silence for a moment before Harrow took the offered cup. "She'll be all right," Mallory said. "Lily." "She will," Harrow replied. "But the house won't forget her." Mallory gave a skeptical grunt. "It's a house, Harrow, stone and timber." Harrow shook his head slowly. "Houses remember, they just don't speak unless asked." Mallory raised a brow. "You planning on asking?" "No." He took a sip of the bitter coffee. "But it might not matter." Mallory glanced over. "Something's bothering you." Harrow nodded. Mallory sighed. "You know the case is closed, right? You got your confession, your motive, even your dramatic burn-the-card moment." "Yes, but—" "Marcus was methodical," Harrow said. "He left nothing to chance. Every clue, every piece of misdirection, even the inheritance clause. But the black envelope, that was too obvious. Hidden in a floorboard, that's practically theatrical. So Marcus hated drama. He was clinical, cold, the kind of man who hides knives in plain sight, not behind curtains." Mallory folded his arms. "You think someone wanted you to find that letter?" "I think someone needed me to." There was a long pause. Mallory stared at the distant silhouette of Cranford House. So Marcus wasn't working alone. He was the mastermind, but even he had limits. Someone helped him set the stage. Maybe they thought they were doing the right thing, or maybe— Harrow hesitated. Maybe they wanted to see what he'd do. Mallory tilted his head. "You suspect someone?" "Not yet." "Then what's your next move?" Harrow didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a smaller envelope, one that hadn't been in the floorboard, but in the back of Everett's drawer, stuck to the bottom by a dried smear of wax. He hadn't shown it to Mallory yet. No name, no seal, just one sentence in perfect script. "The game ends only when you stop playing." No signature, no date. But the handwriting didn't match Marcus. It was smaller, sharper, deliberate. Mallory read it over his shoulder. "Well, that's not ominous." "No," Harrow murmured. "It's an invitation." "Think Lily wrote it?" "No." He turned the envelope in his fingers. "She didn't know the rules until the end." "Then who?" "I don't know." He tucked it away. "But they're still playing." Mallory muttered something under his breath and pushed off the car. "You need sleep." "I need clarity." "Same thing for some people." Harrow offered a dry smile, but said nothing more. The road ahead was long and curling, vanishing into hedgerows and hills. He slid into the passenger seat and closed the door as Mallory started the engine. The wheels crunched gravel and turned toward the lane. Behind them, Cranford House faded behind the trees, its windows catching the morning sun one last time. But even as the car rolled away, Harrow's mind wandered back to the chapel, the flicker of the candle, the warmth of the card's ashes, and the feeling that something else had been watching, something silent, waiting. Justice had been served, but justice and truth, he knew too well, were not always the same thing. And somewhere just beyond the veil of this case, another thread waited to be tugged, a hand unseen, a move unplayed. He opened his notebook and turned the page, case closed. Then beneath it, he wrote 3 more words, not just yet,